Imagine this. Rome, the heart of the world's greatest empire, is engulfed in flames. For 6 days and 7 nights, a relentless fire tears through the city, reducing temples, homes, and entire neighborhoods to ash. Thousands are left homeless, their lives shattered. And when the smoke finally clears, a single, horrifying accusation hangs in the air. The emperor himself, Nero, was the one who lit the match. But is it true? Did a Roman emperor really set his own capital ablaze just to build a palace of gold? Let's unravel one of history's most enduring mysteries. The date is July 18th, 64 AD. The night is warm and dry. In the maze of merchant shops clustered around the Circus Maximus, Rome's colossal chariot-racing stadium, a small fire ignites. In a city like ancient Rome, a tinderbox of wooden buildings, narrow winding streets, and the constant flicker of open flames for cooking and light a small fire is a constant threat. But this was different. Fanned by a strong summer wind, the flames didn't just spread. They exploded. The historian Tacitus, who was a child in Rome at the time, later wrote of the chaos. He described a wall of fire rolling through the city, a monstrous, unstoppable wave of destruction. People screamed, trying to escape with their children, their elderly parents, their most precious belongings. But the streets were a death trap. Buildings collapsed, blocking escape routes. The smoke was so thick, it choked the life out of those who couldn't outrun the inferno. For 6 days, the fire raged. When it was finally contained, a second, smaller fire broke out and burned for another 3 days. By the time the last embers died down, a staggering 2/3 of Rome was a smoldering ruin. The heart of an empire had been ripped out, and that's when the whispers started. They slithered through the refugee camps, echoed in the ruined forums, and grew louder in the halls of the Senate. The fire wasn't an accident, it was arson. And the arsonist was Emperor Nero. Why? The story that took hold was simple and chilling. Nero wanted to build a new Rome, a city worthy of his own grandiose vision. A Neropolis. To do that, he needed to clear the old, cramped city out of the way. He needed a blank canvas. According to his political enemies, Nero saw the fire as an opportunity, chance to create his masterpiece, the Domus Aurea, or the Golden House. And what a house it was. This wasn't just a palace. It was a private city within the city, sprawling over the land cleared by the fire. We're talking about a complex so vast it covered parts of 3 of Rome's 7 hills. It featured a colossal 120-foot-tall bronze statue of himself, an artificial lake the size of a modern reservoir, vineyards, pastures with herds of animals, and buildings inlaid with gold, ivory, and precious jewels. One dining hall supposedly had a rotating ceiling that showered guests with flowers and perfume, mimicking the heavens. While his people were sifting through ashes, desperate and starving, Nero was allegedly planning this monument to his own ego. The most damning story, the one that has been seared into our collective memory for 2 millennia, comes from the historian Suetonius. He claimed that Nero watched the city burn from a tower in his palace, but he wasn't wringing his hands in despair. No, he was dressed in costume, playing his lyre, singing a tragic song about the fall of ancient Troy. This is the origin of the famous phrase, "Nero fiddled while Rome burned." It's the ultimate image of a decadent, narcissistic ruler, completely detached from the suffering of his people. An artist admiring his own destructive masterpiece. But here's where the neat, tidy story begins to fall apart. Is this image of the lyre-playing tyrant actually true? Our most reliable source, Tacitus, is far more cautious. While he reports the rumors that Nero started the fire, he also makes it clear that there was no concrete proof. In fact, he presents a very different picture of Nero's actions. First, the alibi. When the fire broke out, Nero wasn't even in Rome. He was at his seaside villa in Antium, about 35 miles away. He rushed back to the city as soon as he heard the news and immediately began organizing relief efforts. This wasn't the behavior of a man gleefully watching his plan unfold. Tacitus tells us Nero opened his personal gardens and public buildings, including the Pantheon, to shelter the homeless. He arranged for emergency food supplies to be brought in from surrounding towns and sold grain at a drastically reduced price to prevent starvation. He was on the ground directing the firefighters and relief workers. These actions paint a picture not of a monster, but of a responsible leader trying to manage an unprecedented crisis. So if Nero didn't start the fire and even helped his people, why did he get the blame? The answer lies in a toxic mix of politics, public relations, and personality. Nero was already deeply unpopular with the old-money Roman aristocracy, the senators. They saw him as a vulgar showman, more interested in poetry, music, and chariot racing than in the serious business of governing. His plans to rebuild Rome with wider streets and fire-resistant materials, while practical, were also incredibly expensive and involved seizing private property, further angering the wealthy landowners. The Golden House, built on the ruins of the city, was a public relations disaster of epic proportions. It looked like he was profiting from the tragedy, regardless of whether he caused it. Nero knew he was in trouble. The Roman mob was fickle, and their anger needed a target. If it wasn't him, it had to be someone else. He needed a scapegoat, and he found the perfect one. A small, misunderstood, and widely disliked religious sect known as the Christians. At the time, Christians were a fringe group in Rome. Their beliefs were seen as strange and suspicious. They were accused of all sorts of dark practices, from atheism, for refusing to worship the Roman gods, to cannibalism, a misunderstanding of the Eucharist. They were easy targets. Nero launched a brutal and theatrical persecution. He accused the Christians of hatred of the human race and of setting the fire. The punishments were horrific, designed for maximum public spectacle. Tacitus describes Christians being covered in animal skins and torn apart by dogs, or coated in wax and set on fire to be used as human torches to light up Nero's garden parties. It was a sickening display of cruelty, a desperate attempt to divert public anger onto a defenseless minority. For many historians, this was the first state-sponsored persecution of Christians, a dark chapter that would echo for centuries. But even this brutal distraction couldn't save Nero. His reputation was shattered beyond repair. The fiddling while Rome burned story stuck, whether it was true or not. The financial strain of rebuilding Rome and constructing the Golden House led to heavy taxes, which angered the provinces. The Senate despised him. His own generals began to rebel. For years after the fire, in 68 AD, the empire turned on him. Declared a public enemy by the Senate, Nero fled Rome, abandoned by everyone. Cornered in a villa outside the city, with his enemies closing in, he took his own life. His famous last words were, "Qualis artifex, perio." What an artist dies in me. In the end, did Nero burn Rome? The evidence suggests probably not. It was likely a tragic accident, amplified by the conditions of the ancient city. But history is not just about facts. It's about the stories we tell. The story of Nero, the tyrant who torched his city for a golden palace, was more powerful than the complicated truth. He became a symbol of ultimate corruption and ego. Ironically, the city he was accused of burning to glorify himself became the tomb of his legacy, a cautionary tale about how power, paranoia, and a thirst for glory can destroy not just a city, but an empire. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into ancient history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the past. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was Nero a victim of bad press or a monster who got what he deserved? I'll see you next time.